Once upon a time, there was a large, lush green forest where many animals lived. The forest was home to all kinds of wildlife. There was enough food and shelter for all the animals to live in harmony. There were so many families of animals, including rabbits, birds, squirrels, raccoons, and so many more, including a large group of foxes. One day, a fox was walking through the forest. All of a sudden, he heard a loud snap and knew instantly his tail had been caught in a trap. The fox was very upset as he tried to get his tail out of the trap. Finally, he pulled himself away from the trap, but it cut off his tail. The fox was very sad, and he had a very sore tail. The fox cried and thought he would be the laughingstock of all of the foxes. He had lost his beautiful fluffy tail, and whatever should he do now? He walked deeper into the forest until he had an idea. He decided to have a meeting with all his animal friends to discuss his idea. When everyone had gathered together, the fox started to speak. "Thank you for coming to hear me," said the fox. "The reason I have gathered you here today is to talk about why we have a tail. You see, we have eyes, ears, a nose, teeth, legs, all for some reason. But why a tail? A tail is such a useless thing. It seems to get in the way. People trip over it. It gets in the way when we sit down. So after much consideration, I have cut off my own tail, and I would like you all to do the same. I feel great now that I no longer have that useless tail." The lead fox and all the other animals were amazed at what the fox was saying. They all thought it would be quite painful and had never really thought of themselves without tails.
Wow.
All of a sudden, a younger fox asked, "Are you saying this because you no longer have a beautiful furry tail? Are you feeling embarrassed and just thinking about yourself? Maybe you are worried we might leave you out of our group of friends." The group of animals agreed that the fox without a tail was being selfish, and that it was very mean that he should ask them to cut off their tails too. He just wants us all to cut off our tails so he won't be embarrassed or left out. All the animals were quite upset with the fox without a tail, and they left him to think about what he had asked them to do. The lead fox reminded the other animals about how special their tails were and how they should always be proud of their tails. No one should cut off their tails. They all agreed. The fox without a tail was left to wander the forest alone, as his friends realized he was not a true friend. He had asked them to change, to make sure he would fit in with them. He should have accepted his difference, and his friends would have welcomed him, instead of being upset with the fox without a tail. The fox without a tail wandered for a long time and thought about his decision. He returned to his forest, and his friends forgave him. They accepted him just as he was. The fox without a tail was very happy to be back with his friends. The end. Once upon a time, there was a boy named Aladdin who lived far, far away with his poor widowed mother. One night, a stranger knocked on the front door and said, "Good evening. My name is Mustafa, and I am looking for my brother's son, Aladdin. I would like to take Aladdin to work with me to make good money." Aladdin wasn't too keen on the idea, because there was something about Mustafa that he did not like. But his mother thought it was a great idea, and she agreed to let Aladdin go with his uncle. Aladdin and his uncle walked for a full day into the desert, until they reached a cave with a small entrance. Mustafa was too big to fit through the entrance, so he asked Aladdin to go inside. Aladdin did not trust him and was afraid he might block him in. But his uncle told him there were gems and gold inside the cave. Mustafa told Aladdin he could take as much as he wanted. Mustafa only wanted an old lamp from inside the cave. So Aladdin went inside. Aladdin could not believe his eyes when he entered the cave. It was full of treasures. He started filling his pockets with diamonds and rubies and emeralds. He also found a gold ring that fit his finger perfectly. Finally, he found the lamp Mustafa had asked for. He yelled for Mustafa to help him out. But Mustafa said he wanted to see the lamp first. Aladdin did not trust him, so he refused to let him see the lamp. Mustafa was angry and said, "I am not your real uncle, and I don't care about you, Aladdin. Since you won't give me the lamp, I will block the cave entrance with this huge rock." Mustafa left Aladdin inside. Aladdin sat crying with the lamp inside the cave. "Stupid old lamp," he said. "It is not even real gold." He rubbed the lamp a little to wipe off the dust. And all of a sudden, poof! A genie came out of the lamp. "Master, I will grant you 3 wishes," said the genie. Right away, Aladdin said, "Take me home." And poof, Aladdin was at home. His mother almost fainted at the sight of Aladdin. He told her about Mustafa and the cave full of treasures. Aladdin rubbed the ring he had put on his finger, and a second genie appeared. "Master, I can grant you 2 wishes," said the genie. Aladdin wished for a grand palace and enough wealth for him and his family to be rich forever. All of a sudden, Aladdin and his mother had a beautiful palace filled with riches. One day, Aladdin was walking through the city when he saw the most beautiful girl. He fell in love with her at first sight. She was the Sultan's daughter, Yasmin. Yasmin loved Aladdin too. Aladdin went to ask the Sultan if he could marry Yasmin, and the Sultan said yes. After many years, the Sultan died, and Aladdin ruled the country. This news reached Mustafa. Mustafa knew how Aladdin became so rich and powerful, and he made a plan to get the lamp back. Mustafa tricked Yasmin, who had no idea who he was, into trading him with the old ugly lamp for a shiny new one. Yasmin accepted the trade and went to show Aladdin, Aladdin was mad at Mustafa for tricking his wife into this trade. He searched for Mustafa and found him sleeping with the magic lamp. Aladdin slipped the lamp from Mustafa and raced back to the palace. Aladdin had one more wish, and he asked the genie to turn Mustafa into a frog so that he could never bother them again. The genie granted Aladdin's wish, and Yasmin and Aladdin lived happily ever after. High above the city stood the fine statue of the Happy Prince. He was gilded all over with gold leaf, and his eyes were bright sapphires. A large red ruby was in his sword. "He is as beautiful as a weather vane," said one of the town councillors, who wished to be known for his artistic tastes. One little boy in the city was crying for the moon, and his mother asked him, "Why can't you be like the Happy Prince, who never dreams of crying for anything?" Everyone loved the Happy Prince statue in the city. "He looks like an angel," remarked the children of the school. Their math teacher asked, "How would you know? Have you ever seen an angel?" "Of course," said the children, "in our dreams." One day a lonely swallow landed on the Happy Prince for a rest. He nestled in between the statue's feet to go to sleep. But just as he was about to fall asleep, a large drop of water fell on the swallow. The swallow saw no clouds and could not understand where these drops were coming from. The swallow looked up and saw the statue's eyes were full of teardrops, and that is where the drops were coming from. "Who are you?" asked the swallow. "Well, I am the Happy Prince," said the statue. "Why are you crying?" asked the swallow. "I was a happy human prince my whole life, and when I died, they put me up here to see all the city's sadness, and so I weep. I can see a very sad seamstress who has a very sick son. She is so very poor. Swallow, swallow, will you bring her the ruby from my sword?" asked the Happy Prince statue. "Oh, but I must be leaving to meet my swallow family," said the swallow. "Oh, swallow, swallow, little swallow, will you not stay with me for just one day and help me?" The swallow agreed to stay and help to be the messenger for the prince. He flew the ruby to the seamstress's house in the night and laid the precious red stone beside her thimble. He cooled her sick child with a flutter of his wings, and the boy began to feel better. The swallow flew back to the prince to tell him all was done. "I will leave tomorrow." "Please, swallow, stay one more night to help me," the Happy Prince asked the swallow. He asked the swallow to take one of his sapphire eyes to help a poor playwright to finish his play. The little swallow snuck into the playwright's room and left the sapphire. The playwright was overwhelmed and could not believe his luck. The swallow returned to tell the Happy Prince how happy the playwright was. The swallow said goodbye, but the prince asked for his help again, to give his other sapphire eye to the little match girl in the square below. "But if I pluck out your eye, you will be blind." "Do not worry, little swallow. Go and join your family now." But the little swallow insisted on staying forever with the Happy Prince. The Happy Prince asked the swallow to take each leaf of his gold to help the poor in his city, and so the swallow did, as the Happy Prince asked, leaving the Happy Prince looking quite dull. The swallow stayed too long, and the cold winter made him very sick. He knew he was going to die. He told the prince he loved him and kissed him on the lips before falling at the statue's feet to his death. At that moment, a strange cracking noise sounded from inside the statue. The leaded heart of the statue had been broken. The city councilors took down the Happy Prince statue as it no longer was gold with precious rubies and sapphires. They found a dead bird at its feet and sent everything to be taken away to the garbage. God was looking down and sent 2 of his angels to bring the 2 most precious things from the city to him. The angels found the dead bird and the broken leaded heart and statue and brought them to God. God thanked them so much. He brought the little swallow back to life and repaired the statue and his broken heart. And he put them in his Garden of Eden for the little swallow to sing forever and live with his Happy Prince statue. Once upon a time, there was a little girl who lived in a village by a forest. Whenever she went out, she wore a red hooded cape. Everyone called her Little Red Riding Hood. One day, her mother baked some cakes, and she asked Little Red Riding Hood to take them to her grandmother, who lived in the forest. Little Red Riding Hood was very excited and happy to go visit her grandmother. Her mother packed up the cakes in a basket and reminded Little Red Riding Hood to not waste time and go straight to her grandmother's house and to not talk to strangers. Along the path to her grandmother's house, there were flowers, ponds, and woodland animals along the way. And Little Red Riding Hood took her time and enjoyed them all. Then, all of a sudden, a wolf was beside her, asking, "Well, Little Red Riding Hood, what are you doing here?" She told him she was on her way to visit her grandmother's house in the forest. The wolf wanted to gobble up Little Red Riding Hood, but he noticed a woodcutter coming along. So the wolf thought of a plan. "Well, where does your grandmother live?" the wolf asked. Little Red Riding Hood answered, "She lives over the bridge and past the lake," she told the wolf. "Let's play a game and race to your grandmother's house to see who can get there first," said the wolf. "Okay," said Little Red Riding Hood as she ran towards her grandmother's house as fast as she could. The wolf knew a secret path that was far quicker and ran towards her grandmother's house to beat Little Red Riding Hood in the race. The wolf knocked on the grandmother's door, and she asked, "Is that you, Little Red Riding Hood?" The wolf was able to disguise his voice very well, and he replied, "Yes, grandmother, it is me." "Oh, come in, my dear Little Red Riding Hood," said grandmother. To her surprise, the big bad wolf ran in and gobbled her up. The wolf then dressed up to disguise himself as the grandmother. He put on her nightcoat and nightcap and jumped in her bed. Very soon after, Little Red Riding Hood knocked on the door. The wolf disguised his voice again and asked, "Who is it?" "It's me," said Little Red Riding Hood. "Oh, do come in, dear," crackled the wolf. When Little Red Riding Hood saw her grandmother, she barely recognized her and thought her voice sounded strange. As Little Red Riding Hood got closer, she noticed her grandmother's ears were so big and asked, "Grandmother, what big ears you have." "All the better to hear you with, my dear," croaked the wolf. "But, grandmother, what big eyes you have." "All the better to see you with, my sweet girl," replied her grandmother, who was really the wolf. "But, grandmother, what big teeth you have," said Little Red Riding Hood, feeling very scared. "All the better to eat you with," roared the wolf as he leapt from the bed towards Little Red Riding Hood. She ran towards the door as fast as she could. And now she could fully see that it was not her grandmother, but the big bad wolf. As she was trying to escape, she yelled, "Help!" in her loudest voice. "Help!" Cutter, who was working in the forest, heard Little Red Riding Hood's cries for help and ran to help her. He caught the big bad wolf and shook him so hard that grandmother came out all in one piece. Little Red Riding Hood hugged her grandmother and apologized for talking to strangers and wasting time. Her grandmother said, "Don't worry, dear. You have learned some important lessons. Now why don't we enjoy those delicious cakes you brought me?" The woodcutter took the big bad wolf deep into the forest, so he could never bother Little Red Riding Hood or her family ever again. The end.